This is Kate Swoboda, creator of YourCourageousLife.com, director of the Courageous Living Coach certification at TeamCLCC.com, and author of the book, The Courage Habit, which is available at booksellers and at Amazon. The Your Courageous Life podcast is all about going after what you want and creating and living a more courageous, emotionally resilient life. Might drop a couple of F-bombs, so maybe don't listen with your kids in the backseat of the car. And here we go with today's episode. Oh man. Today's episode is about navigating an uncertain world. And I felt particularly compelled to record this episode given I don't even know what name do you put on it? Like, what name do you put on the week when coronavirus is happening, the stock market is happening? It's like Friday the 13th as I'm recording this. It's going to be Friday the 13th this week, and there's a new moon and astrological stuff and the usual everyday laundry bills, kids, partners, friends, trying to manage our lives. And my hope is that today's podcast episode will actually leave people feeling a little bit more grounded as we navigate this uncertain world. So let's dive in. First things first, I want to be really clear about how I'm going to talk about how we're responding to, for instance, the coronavirus, the stock market, things like that. I have been seeing some things happen online where some people are downright condescending towards people who are worried about, for instance, coronavirus. And what I'm seeing is that the people who are not worried are almost kind of like irritated with the people who are, and kind of like, why are you even giving that your attention? And why are you even posting that? And like, everything's overblown, everything's overrated. And I just want to drop it in there that to respond to someone's fears about something in that way, it's probably not the kindest response. I'm just going to go back. It's not the kindest response. How about you show up with kindness as you point out ways in which, very much so, the media and others can overblow things and stoke panic and fear. I don't want the media doing those things either. And I think it's good that we put our critical thinking hats on and we go, let's look at this and really make sure that before we share something, that it's accurate news. Let's really make sure that we contextualize everything we share. But you can say all those things, everyone, all of us, we can say all of those things without taking on a tone or using words that imply or directly state that people who are really worried about these things are somehow irrational, dumb, just I'm sure you guys have seen it too. If you've been on social media at all, I'm sure you've seen it. At the same time, I have also seen people who are very worried about these things kind of taking something of the same tone with you're not taking it seriously enough, and what's wrong with you that you're not really seeing the severity of the problem here, and you're just, naive, or hope is not a strategy, and to that, I would also say, how about you also, if that has been you? Just consider that for somebody who is not worried about these things, and for as important to you as it might be that other people take those issues seriously, we just don't win people over when we're basically telling them, hey, you need to listen to me because you're wrong. I don't care what your position is. I really don't. You could talk about, I can completely and totally agree, for instance, that sexism is a problem. But never have I ever seen a man pay attention to the issue of sexism because a bunch of people were coming at him going, you're sexist, you're wrong, you're messed up, it just doesn't end up accomplishing what we want to accomplish. I am not talking about pandering. I'm not talking about pretending that an issue isn't there. I'm not talking about emotionally laboring to come around and be like really nice and, convince people. I'm just talking about like just the basic psychology of human beings is that we don't change people's minds by telling people that they are dumb or stupid, implying it with our words, with our tone. It just doesn't change people's minds. So if actually what you want to do is affect change in terms of how people view these things, just consider that. And of course, there's always an opportunity to show up with kindness. Please have some compassion for the people who see differently than you. They did not wake up this morning and go, I know, I'll just be contrarian just to make you mad. No. Everybody's doing the best they can with what they've got, and not everybody sees the world in the same way. So, as I talk about ways to navigate an uncertain world in this podcast, I am going to be orienting what I say in the direction of helping, particularly those who are feeling a lot of fear and anxiety about the things that are going on, to try to lessen those fears, not to tell you you are wrong for having them, but to address the fact that it is really, really difficult and it's a form of suffering to feel stuck in that. So that is my intention for today, and I hope that it is received with the fullest possible heart, because I would love it if somebody who has been feeling a lot of anxiety, fear, sadness, distress, hopelessness about the things that they're seeing in the news headlines might walk away from today's podcast episode going, okay, I still feel those things. They're still real for me, but I can perhaps contextualize them at least a little bit, and then I sleep better and I feel better in my life. And for those of you who are not worried about any of these things, just consider that somewhere in your life, there is something about the world that could arouse these feelings for you. So given that, you could just listen and notice how you might approach the next time you feel like things are just really chaotic, uncertain. You also could consider that if you had an interest in helping those, if you are someone who is not stressed out about these things and you have an interest in being a point of light in our world, someone who's going to help, you might consider sharing this podcast episode or sharing some of the things that I'm talking about here, just for contemplation. So, first I'll start with this, okay? My own take on it. I've been having, just like, if you really knew me, I have a lot of ups and downs about the news headlines. I have a lot of times where I'll feel like, okay, we're all going to be okay. It's all good. And then I have times where I'm sitting here like, texting my husband going, babe, can you get some more toilet paper? Can you make sure we're all stocked up on children's aspirin and ibuprofen? Because, we have a kid. And, I've been dropping that I'm in the process of a move. And when I see uncertain things happening in the financial markets and I've got a house that's in escrow and I'm kind of sitting here like, oh my God, it could be kind of a big deal if like something were to shut down banking or lending or, throw the financial markets for a curve and then this house sale didn't go through. So I have ups and downs with these things too. Here's what I try to do when I notice that I'm having a lot of the downs, a lot of the, this is not feeling good. So first of all, and this comes from basic Buddhist psychology, I try to remember the concept of groundlessness, which is the wisdom of Buddhist psychology to me is it's pragmatism, and remembering that actually none of us have ground underneath our feet. We are walking through the world tender and vulnerable at all times, whether the news headlines are saying coronavirus or not. In other words, our mortality is a day-by-day equation. Our lives are lived day to day. We create mental constructs that we have a lot of days spanning out forward from this one that you happen to be in right now, but it's actually not true. We have no guarantees. So your life, my life, all of our lives, and this is tender and vulnerable, Our lives are in no more or less danger when the news headlines say coronavirus than they were before. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, lady, are you crazy? Like, have you read the same things I have? I have. All I'm pointing out is that if it wasn't coronavirus, it would be something else. That every single time you step off a curb, look both ways, because nobody ever steps off a curb and anticipates the bus that takes them out. Nobody ever gets into a car thinking it will be the last time. People get food poisoning and have died from food poisoning. Nobody ever goes into that restaurant and gets that takeout. Now, again, if you are feeling some anxiety and you're thinking, Kate, you're kind of giving me more things to feel anxious about. Of course, that's not my intention. Take a moment just to ground into you, maybe put a hand over your heart if it's a safe space to do that. If you're driving, obviously, please keep your hands on the wheel. But just really understand that part of what makes life such a thrilling adventure is the unknown, is the fact that it is precious, that we don't know when we have an expiration date. And in a strange way, for me, and I say strange because it's often very counter to what the culture teaches us, in a strange way to me, remembering that I was in no more danger before whatever news headline happens to be up right now than I was the day before, that actually the tenderness and the vulnerability and the preciousness of life is with us every day, no matter what the news headlines say. I find that grounding, because then I think, how do I not get caught in an illusion that something is different today? Because nothing's actually different. It was always the same. Life is unpredictable. We are always navigating an uncertain world. So then, what do we do with that? If life is inherently out of our control, then what do we do with the anxiety that we feel when it gets pretty heavy, pretty intense? Well, the first thing I'd say is use this as an opportunity to really evaluate what you're doing with the time that you have. I really try, and this is a practice, it is a muscle that I have to flex. It gets stronger all the time, but it is work. I have to really try to remember, let me rephrase that actually, I get to try. I get the opportunity to try because I am here and I am breathing now. I get the opportunity to choose that I'm going to put my time, my focus, my attention on the here and now and the joy that is here. If I knew right now that a meteor were hurtling towards the earth that was going to take us all out, my deepest desire would be to go out holding close the people I love most. So since, as far as I'm aware, there is no meteor hurtling towards Earth, how do I then root down deeper in my life to really look my husband in the eyes? Because I love him like I can't even put words to. He knows me better than anyone's ever known me in my life. How do I let my friends know I love you? I'm so grateful for what you've given. I'm so grateful to have had this life experience with you. How do I soak up every sound of my daughter's voice and the smell of her hair and the way her eyes shine when she smiles and that incredible laugh that all kids have? I mean, have you ever heard a small child laughing and it's not the most delightful sound in the world? I would want to look at the sky and memorize blue. I would want to put my hands down in the dirt and smell earth. I would want to send up a prayer. I would want to send up a prayer that would wish that every single human on the planet would have an alleviation of their suffering, So here we are, and none of us know when. The meteor that I bring up, that's just a metaphor, right? Could be a bus, could be an illness, could be a car accident, could be just old age, could be anything that takes one of us out. We all know we have an expiration date. So what are you doing with the time you have now? If you are not doing work that lights up your soul, if you are not in a relationship where you feel cherished, if you have been looking around at your life for far too long, going, something's got to give, what's it time to do? And I try to live my life this way at all times, which again, I realize that to some people it might be like, that sounds like a really depressing way to live. To me, I find it very enlivening. In fact, it's one of the reasons why I'm leaving the state of California and moving to a new state. Where we're moving to, it's a lot less expensive to live. We can take some of the equity from the home sale and put it towards a home and just live, have more financial freedom. Because when I was sitting and looking at my life, I was recognizing that a lot of money was going towards living on what is in essence just a patch of earth. There's this patch of earth that I've been living on for many, many years here in California that is far more expensive of a patch of earth to live on than another patch of earth. And I just went, how much more time do I have? How much less pressure do I feel around finances just because we live on a different patch of earth? And so it was a conversation with my husband around the things that we have here, can we create them elsewhere? And what do we want to do with our limited time on earth? And he was having that stuff come up for him too. He's an artist and he has a salary job, and his salary job is in his field, thankfully. But, he gets so much joy out of creating conceptual pieces and apparel, pins, patches, things like that. But unless he puts the time into building a whole business around his art, he's going to need to be in the salary job. And there was a very real discussion about how we can actually retire sooner if we make this change right now. And we didn't want to delay more freedom with our time because that's the thing you can't get back. So, is there art that you have been yearning to create, a book you have been yearning to write, a place in the world you've been yearning to travel to? Is there, I talk with so many people who want their marriages to be better. And every podcast interview I've ever given, I try to be very transparent. I'll be transparent here. My husband and I went to years of couples counseling. And I'm grateful that we did, because I think couples counseling is often something that people don't embark on until the shit hits the fan in the relationship, until there's infidelity or drug use or something super, super big and you're on the brink of divorce. I'm so grateful that my husband and I started couples counseling just as a recognition of like, hey, we love each other. We want to love each other deeper. We both are bringing our own past patterns and conditioning to our relationship, and we need help navigating this because we love each other too much to settle for anything less. And I'm very grateful for that because now we have a lot of those tools. And when I hear about other people who are going, yeah, my relationship isn't quite where I want it, just check in with yourself now. Is there more love available for you if the two of you come together and couples counseling doesn't have to be your thing, but have the hard conversations, have the deeper, more vulnerable conversations in an uncertain world where the fact is we never know when our expiration date will hit. What are you doing with that time? Are you using the time you have to create more love, more connection, to realize dreams, to live and work and breathe and eat and move and be all that you have wanted to be? Because really, we just don't have time to waste. I know that some of you might know that I'm the director of a life coach training program called the Courageous Living Coach Certification. And we build into our program each of our trainees who are training to become coaches looking at their own lives. And there are bumps along the way. There are absolutely places that trainees hit where they're going, wow, this is intense. I kind of don't like these questions. They're uncomfortable. And to me, it's like, yeah, they are uncomfortable. Thank goodness that you are here and that you are showing up and that you've got a community and people here supporting you as you embrace these questions, because what a shame it would be to never risk asking if perhaps you might be meant for more. So all of that having been said, now I'd like to talk a little bit about processing through some of the feelings of anxiety, because they are very real. And I'll start by saying that there are other podcast episodes for the Your Courageous Life podcast where I've talked about things like how to regulate emotion. And those could be other episodes that you would want to revisit. But I got to tell you, in my own life, and I talked about this to some degree in the Courage Habit, a huge way that I process out anxiety is accessing the body. In the Courage Habit, I talk about 4 parts, okay? And you can use any of these. So there's accessing the body. There's listening without attachment to what your fear says. So you listen to it, but you don't attach to it as truth. There's reframing limiting stories. So a story of limitation that you reframe into a story of possibility. Not talking about positive affirmations, just instead of I can't, going to I'm willing, I'll try. And then reaching out and creating community. So as you are feeling anxiety about what you're reading on the news headlines, consider that any of those tools could be great tools to use. Access the body, listen without attachment, reframe limiting stories, reach out and create community. And if you have the Courage Habit book, you're walked through all of that in a lot more depth. But even if you don't have the Courage Habit book, head over to yourcourageouslife.com/begin. The worksheets that go with the Courage Habit book, they might not make quite as much sense if you don't have the book, but you probably can kind of sort of figure out what you need to do, and that might help too. And those are free. Those worksheets are free. So, this having been said, accessing the body is my favorite tool, personally. I feel like accessing the body is this place where the stuff that would otherwise get stuck gets to come up and out. And I actually did it this morning. You might even hear like a little slight quality of something that's different in my voice today than you've heard in other podcast episodes. And it's because earlier today, and I know this sounds crazy, I put on my playlist of kind of sad, intense music. In case you want to find it, you can. Actually, it's on Spotify. So many people have asked me for it. I put it on Spotify. Just search for Kate Process Work. Process Work. WORK. You know how to spell work. Kate Process Work on Spotify. And I sit down, I turn that on, and I just start to cry. I think about my fears that someone I love might get sick, or that the stock market could have some kind of negative repercussion for myself or for my business. Or I think about the business owners who are really struggling right now, the brick and mortar businesses that are really struggling right now. I feel angry. I don't know how this is all going to play out, but currently the news reports are saying that the Trump administration plans to consider cutting payroll taxes to fund relief efforts as businesses and others struggle with the coronavirus. But guess what happens if they do that? Medicare and Social Security get cut. And there's so many people who are depending on those programs, and I start to feel angry. But I don't want that sadness and that anger to stay in my body. So I sit down and I start to cry. And if I need to, I take a towel and I scream into this towel. And yes, does this sound crazy? Yeah, it does. I understand that. And yet it's the sanest practice that I know. This playlist I'm referring to always ends with happier, uplifting music, because the idea is that much like a meditation practice where you notice the breath and then you get distracted and you return to the breath, I'm coming into this practice of process work. That's what I call it. And I'm getting out the feelings, and then I'm coming back to myself. And the music for me helps to set a container around the experience so that I can finish up this process work, this almost like a meditation session, and then just get up and go back into my day. So again, if my voice sounds a little bit different, it's because I was screaming earlier because I was furious. And right now, I got to be real with you. I feel free. I feel okay. It's not spiritual bypass. It's not that I would sit here and go, oh, well, now it's not even a problem if, grandma can't get her Social Security that she paid into. Oh, well, whatever, coronavirus. It's not like that. I'm not numb. If anything, these practices keep me from numbing out. Because if I didn't have some outlet for the emotion, what I know about myself is that I would go one of two places. I would either go to being really irritable and snippy and just sniping at my family and people I love and resenting every email that hits my inbox and grumbling and grouching. Or I would just start checking out. And I've done this before. I've been clinically depressed before. I've spent my time sitting in front of a couch in my pajamas for days at a time, eating nothing but cereal. And I am grateful every damn day that that is not my life anymore. I am grateful every day. I mean, my peace has been hard won. I will tell all of you that now. So I know what it's like to feel panic, worry, fear, anger, resentment, sadness, numb, anxiety, all these things. I know what that feels like. And I think I owe it to myself, and I deserve better than just sitting in those feelings. And I think the same thing about you listening to this. Now, what I just described, if it sounds just like, there's no way I'm doing that, lady, great. There's some other options. I talk about them in the Courage Habit. One of them would be a basic meditation practice. I do that too, like a calm, centered, breathing meditation practice or a guided meditation practice. As it happens, I'm a teacher, a meditation teacher for the Simple Habit app. And you can find my meditations there, and it's free, so no cost. They do have some stuff behind a paywall, but you can get a lot of stuff for free. And I have one meditation in there that's about a meditation for days when you feel like you're not enough. Because that's real, right? There are days when we do not feel like we are enough. And I want help for you for those days. You could also access the body by going for a run. Just make sure that as you're running, you don't just kind of like run, but you actually like are running with an intention of like every step you take, I am just stamping out the anxiety. I'm letting it go. Run, 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 run. CrossFit, another favorite place. Oh, man, if you've never done med ball slams on the ground, that is my anger catharsis right there. It's the best. I had a interview earlier today with Eric Fisher of the podcast called Beyond the To-Do List. And I told him, when I found CrossFit, I felt like I'd found the one, other than my husband. It's like, where have you been all my life? CrossFit. And then there are other things you can do too, like a laugh session. And if you've never heard of that before, go onto YouTube and search for laughter yoga. I call it a laugh session, but it's basically you just start laughing and you feel completely ridiculous doing it at first. And then somehow it gives way to the real thing where you just start laughing like crazy. So it doesn't have to be feeling emotion means, or processing out your anxiety means, you go into the deepest, darkest, most awful thing. How'd you like that voice? Processing emotion can also mean that joy is a doorway in, that moving your body is a doorway in. And like I said, for me, for my money, for my time, it's free, but for my time, that Kate Process Work playlist that's on Spotify and just taking some time to cry it out, to scream it out. You could scream into pillows. You could hit pillows. It's just all about what is it that for you would get some of these feelings dislodged? What is it that for you would get them up and out of you so that you can go back into your day, back into your life? So, to recap, it is a tender thing to be a human being. We are always navigating an uncertain world, regardless of what the news headlines say. Everybody before news headlines were even invented was navigating an uncertain world. What do you want to do with the time that you have? Are you living life to its fullest? Is now the time to step forward and make profound change? And what will you do on a regular basis to get the feelings that might otherwise be stuck up and out of you so that they don't run you, so that they don't dampen your spirit, so that they don't just become a downward spiral? And whatever you can do to step into more of a space of owning the truth of what you feel, because it is true that sometimes things are scary and hard and frustrating or infuriating or sad. That's very real. So how do you find a way to own that emotional experience, not bypass it, and also process it out so that it goes through you instead of staying in you? All right, that's today's podcast. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You know you can continue the work and the fun if you want to. Head on over to yourcourageouslife.com/begin and become a Your Courageous Life subscriber, because as soon as you sign up, you get access to an entire library of worksheets and audios and other bonuses. And of course, you'll be receiving more courage in your inbox. And who wouldn't love that? You can learn more about the Courageous Living Coach certification at teamclcc.com. You can get the Courage Habit at your local bookseller, on Amazon, wherever you like. We can even connect on social media. I'm on Facebook at Your Courageous Life. So look for facebook.com/Your Courageous Life. And I'm on Instagram as Kate Courageous. And I'd love to connect with you on Instagram. So here's to you, using these courageous tools in your life and creating a real ripple effect of good. And again, thanks so much for listening. I love it that you're here.